Hi, everyone. My name is Ilinca, and I'm a Girl Up leader from New Hampshire. I'm super excited to welcome you to our webisode titled Let's Talk About It, Conversations in Sexual and Reproductive Health, Rights, and Justice. And I'm really looking forward to a conversation today with an amazing leader advocating for menstrual equity. Um, but before we get started, I want to give a quick overview of what we'll be covering in today's webisode. First, I'll be introducing a bit about Girl Up and today's guest, and then we'll dive into the interview itself. So, first of all, what is Girl Up? Girl Up is a girl-centered leadership development initiative focusing on equity for girls and women in spaces where they are unheard or underrepresented. Founded by the United Nations Foundation in 2010, Girl Up operates a global network of regional affiliates and has impacted countless girls worldwide. And ultimately, I think its leadership model has been very impactful for me specifically, and for this global network, because it really develops transformational leaders who can advance gender justice together. And it really centers around this idea of when girls rise, we all rise. So to look at the impact of it, there are 200,000 girl and youth leaders in the Girl Up community around the world in 152 countries and all 50 US states. So, as young leaders, there are so many ways that you can get involved with Girl Up. You can start a Girl Up club or find one near you. And this really allows you to take community-based local action and connect to this amazing network of changemakers. And so clubs can be campus-centered or school-centered or even based in a community more broadly. And they're an amazing way to really take initiative and join and have this community group that's really advocating for gender equality alongside you. But we also have an online community that allows you to connect with a network of girl leaders working together for gender equality online, which is one of the amazing things about Girl Up because it has such a broad reach and you can really start amazing conversations with people all around the world who share the same passions as you. And then last but not least, Girl Up has so many amazing events that they put on, particularly the US and Global Leadership Summits that you're welcome to register for and are absolutely transformative, and also girl-led regional summits. So definitely look to see whether there is a region or a coalition of Girl Up clubs around you that will have their own events and opportunities. But for this webinar series in particular, there are a few main things that we're hoping to achieve. First of all, skills. We're working hard on developing a skill set of young leaders to tackle the field of sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice worldwide, as this is one that really impacts women and girls and people in general's health and well-being and human rights. And it's incredibly important to have this background knowledge that this webinar series is aiming to share. But beyond that, inspiration is another main pillar. Our young leaders need to be inspired to act, hearing from leaders who can share their stories and help inspire a new generation, which is why we are here today. And that brings us to our third main pillar, which is role models. We'll be hearing from role models in the field, helping inspire and engage participants with their stories and experiences, advocating for sexual and reproductive health, rights, and justice. And that brings me to today's guest speaker, whom I'm very excited to introduce, Ceylan Rowe. Ceylan is a dedicated social changemaker who has worked for the past 20 years to remove barriers for women, girls, and marginalized communities. Ceylan is the founder of Fihri, a social enterprise aimed at eliminating period poverty worldwide sustainably. 500 million menstruators across the globe lack access to menstrual products each month, and 1 out of 4 students in the US face similar obstacles. As a child of immigrants, Ceylan started her career as the Massachusetts Office for Refugees and Immigrants, trying to help refugees become self-sufficient in the state. And she later became a social entrepreneur, trying to help girls locally and globally. Later was appointed as a commissioner for the Metro West Commission on the Status of Women, and even ran for office. Ceylan received her BA in Political Science and International Affairs from Northeastern University and her MBA from Babson College, helping her grow Fihri into a global organization with a mission to end period poverty sustainably. And I personally had the honor of meeting Ceylan several years ago. I'm the New England Coalition leader, and we've had Ceylan support us so much in the past, whether being a last-minute guest speaker at an event where a speaker wasn't able to make it and absolutely saving the day, or helping teach so many young women about entrepreneurship and menstrual equity, and being a real advisor and inspiration for so many girl up leaders. So I'm personally very excited to have her here today and to be interviewing her. And just a little bit about me. As I mentioned, I've been the New England Coalition leader for Girl Up for the past several years, and I've organized over 15 leadership development events for girls worldwide through my work with Girl Up. I've had the honor of speaking at Girl Up's summits these past couple of years, and also being an honoree at Girl Up's fifth annual Girl Hero Awards. And I'm especially passionate about the connections between environmental and gender justice. So that's something I'm also hoping to touch on a little bit today. Um, I'm currently in my second year at Wellesley College, majoring in political science and peace and justice studies, and I'm really excited to continue working with Girl Up. But now, the moment we've all been waiting for, delving into our interview with Ceylan. This is a photo of us at Fihri's headquarters, which is an amazing, amazing space. Um, but yes, just to dive in, Ceylan, is there anything that I missed in our introduction or anything that you'd like to share about your journey or Fihri for a quick background?
Oh, I'm so honored to be here, and I absolutely love this picture of the two of us. And it's a pleasure, Ilinca, to be with you and to know you and to be here today. And so, before we begin, how about, well, you know the answer to this, but I always ask, who is Fihri? Do you want to,
Ooh,
Ilinca, answer that?
I believe that Fihri was the first woman to start a school for girls,
She was the
but I
first.
know you can give a better,
Yeah,
better
she was the
answer.
first person to ever start a university. So
Oh,
not the first
university.
woman, the first person to ever start a university in the world in the 800s in Morocco. Her name was
That's
Fatima.
even better.
Mhm. And so I launched Fairy a few years ago when my own daughter started her menstruation journey. And I wanted her to have period products that were healthier, more sustainable. And I found it very difficult to find. And so I launched Fury after being a commissioner for the Metro West Commission on the Status of Women. And at Women's Advocacy Day at the State House, we heard from eighth graders teaching sixth graders how to use toilet paper as period pads because they couldn't afford it. And I was in shock that this was happening in Massachusetts. Oftentimes, people think that period poverty happens overseas, which it absolutely does. 500 million women and girls globally can't afford period products every single month. And there's 800 million women and girls who menstruate every single month. So the majority of the world's population who menstruate can't afford period products. And so this is not only a global issue, but it was a local issue for me. And so when I launched Fury, I wanted to make sure that my daughter and her peers had equal access to sustainable period products.
I love that. And I think it's so important just to start that action locally and also just know that it is a global issue, but it does have such an impact that, I see every day in my community at my college. And I think the work of Theory just does this amazing job of raising awareness as well as taking tangible action and providing those products. So I also love that it was inspired by your own daughter. Um, just to elaborate further, what does this issue area really mean to you, and how does it intersect across other areas of sexual and reproductive health and rights and justice?
So when you think about all the things you do in a day, you go to school, some people go to work, some people want to go to be with friends. If you don't have access to period products, how do you do that? If you don't have access to catching the blood, how do you get out of bed? How do you get out and go to school? How do you concentrate in school? And if you're not concentrating in school, if you're not at school, how are you going to graduate? If you don't graduate, how are you going to ultimately get a job? How are you going to be financially independent? So, having access to period products to me is the foundation, the fundamentals of women and girls being successful and in life, having barriers removed, educational barriers, financial barriers. You need access to period products. So this issue is really near and dear to me because I have my entire life, literally my entire life, have been trying to remove barriers for women and girls. I wish there was a Girl Up program when I was in high school, and there wasn't. And so actually in high school, in 1999, my family and I, we were visiting a family in Turkey, and we were in an earthquake that killed over 17,000 people. And having survived that as an incoming senior, it really affected me. And I really wanted to dedicate my life to helping people. And so that was the year that I started a young feminist club at my high school because I saw girls being groped in the hallways and nobody was doing anything about it. I got really mad. And so I've always been somebody who sees a problem, wants to roll up my sleeves and get involved and help. And so I just my journey has gone in many wonderful curves. But at the end of the day, in order to see women and girls be successful, they have to have access to these period products so they could achieve whatever dreams they want in their life.
I love that answer because you're right. I think um, having access to menstrual products is just under like an undercurrent of that a woman or a girl or a menstruator could just possibly hope to achieve in their life, and it's just so deeply essential. And yet, there's still so much stigma, and this issue really isn't talked about nearly enough. So, thank you for bringing attention to that. And I have so many questions I'm hoping to ask you, but I think the first one that popped into my mind was based off of the journey you mentioned, which, like a lot of Girl Up members, really started, with your family, but also within your own school and looking to address those issues that you were seeing every day. Um, but as we know, you've also run for office. You've been an entrepreneur and an activist, and I was wondering how your leadership has evolved and what your journey has been like more in more detail, just developing those leadership skills and trying different avenues to make change.
Here's what I've learned about myself is I've had a lot of self-doubt my entire life. I've always had this like everybody knows more than me. Everybody like I'm going to follow everybody's advice. I'm going to take everybody's advice. And what I've learned is actually listen to my own advice, my own intuition. You know yourself. You are smart. You are capable, and you have to trust that gut feeling inside of you that tells you that no, this isn't right, or yes, you should definitely follow this path. And so in these different journeys that I've taken as a social entrepreneur, as I ran for office, as a mom, as somebody who cares deeply about removing the barriers for women and girls, what I would strongly advise and the lessons I've learned is to listen to your intuition, listen to yourself. You are very smart and capable of doing good in this world, but you have to believe in yourself.
I love that so much, and I think that's so incredibly important. And imposter syndrome is very real, and I definitely experience it, and I know so many people do, and that's why it's so important to just like have the confidence in your own perspective and your own lived experiences.
And here's what I will also say. It gets fun getting older. The older you get, you just know yourself better and you're more confident in your own self. And you're more confident saying, no, 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 I don't want to do that, or no, thank you. And so our society and our culture doesn't, I don't appreciate, we don't appreciate getting older. And I will say it actually gets more fun as you get older. It gets better.
I love that. And I agree. I mean, I've talked about this with my friends quite a bit recently. Like, just the idea of getting older is something actually quite comforting because, you acquire more experience and you really build those connections and you just have that chance to step into your own leadership. And, that happens with time. And I think that definitely is something I'm realizing more and more. And it's something I'm excited for.
And one piece of advice that I always give to my children is I tell them time is your currency. How do you want to spend your time? And as you get older, you're very careful about who you spend your time with and what is worth your time and what isn't. And so I've been to so many meetings that I really just I should not have spent so much time doing. I met with people I should not have. And so you get, as you get older, you're better at kind of listening to that intuition and knowing this isn't the space for me, or this is the right space for me. These are my people. These are the people that I want to be with.
That's so important. And I guess going off of that, you definitely use your time in very impactful ways. So, what does your day-to-day work look like now with Theory? And, what's a day in your life? What are the things that you focus most of your time on and that you come to value?
So my day to day, it's a beautiful balance of sending my children off to school. I love driving them to school, and then I will make sure I take time for myself to exercise, and then I will launch Fihri. We have team meetings with our interns and our staff, and then we really set the agenda for the week, and all that we want to accomplish and all the programs that we're running. And then I make sure that being there for my children is really important to me, and so I pick them up from school and I will spend some time with them, and then I will go back and get some more Fihri work done, and we'll have some dinner, and then I'll get more Fihri work done in the evening. So I will say that my life is not a 9 to 5. Being a social entrepreneur and being a mother are two, and a wife are these hats that I love being, but they are a beautiful mix in the day, and that is going to be very common. That's common with women and mothers, and that's okay. Your day doesn't have to look like 9 to 5. It's okay that it could be this beautiful mix, and I hope that people are comfortable and businesses get more comfortable with that. But that's what my day to day looks like at Fury.
I love that. And I think, yes, it's so amazing and inspiring to hear just I don't know. There are so many narratives that are saying that you have to choose between being a good mom and having a career, and I still see those like so prevalent in culture. And I think it's just so inspiring to see that no, you really don't. And there's so many ways to value both, and also to have them be so intertwined in a really empowering way. Like just like Fury was something that you started really inspired by your daughter, and I think I'm sure she's very proud of it as well. Um, a couple of things that have come to mind. You were mentioning that you experienced the earthquake yourself when you were younger in Turkey, and I know that there was one recently as well, and that one of the big pillars of your work with Theory is also really making sure that women who are in vulnerable settings have access to period products. Um, and that's really not the case in so many situations, like in disaster relief and in humanitarian aid. Oftentimes, they're not designed in a gender sensitive way, and they're not designed to include period products and the needs of women. I think I was reading that Syrian women refugees, like over 70%, don't have access to menstrual products. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on how we can ensure that women in vulnerable situations in disaster settings and humanitarian settings have access to period products, and what Fury's been doing about that.
Yeah, so I'm really excited that Fury very recently launched a disaster relief program. And so we essentially, one of the programs that we do is provide period products to women and girls in areas where there's earthquakes or other flood survivors. And this is a program that I just want to expand. So we have found nonprofit partners already on the ground. And so our Fury community could essentially just purchase $10 to X amount of period products, and we will work with our nonprofit partner on the ground and send these period products to the women and girls in need. And so when you think about an earthquake, for example, and I could only speak from my own experience, is we were actually in when it happened to me, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up and the bed was shaking, and it took me a minute to realize that I was in an earthquake. And once the shaking stopped, I didn't know what happened to my parents. I didn't know. So I immediately just ran out of the room and was searching for my parents, and thank God they were fine. But we all got out of the house because we didn't know what was, if there were going to be more earthquakes. And we literally were sitting in the pitch dark, looking up at the sky full of stars. And all you could hear, and it's still it's still like is so eerie to me, but all you could hear is buildings collapsing in the pitch dark. And so we didn't know the magnitude of what had happened until the sun came up, and then we got in the car and drove like 20 minutes to see if my grandmother was still alive. And thank God she was. But we just saw buildings stacked upon each other, like the floors were stacked upon each other, and trucks were used as like pickup trucks were used as makeshift ambulances. And so when you think about this disaster that happens, it's instant. You don't plan for these things. And people are traumatized, they're scared, but the tremblings are still happening. And so humanitarian efforts, rightfully so, are trying to find them safe shelter, food, which is essential. But what doesn't get talked about and what is kind of a last minute thought is period products. Periods don't stop when there's hurricanes. Periods don't stop when there's flooding. Periods don't stop during these times. And so it's really important to just provide the basic human decency of giving them period products. So it's one less thing they have to worry about during this time. So that's the program that I'm hoping Fihri will expand. So far, we've given period products to the Turkey and the Syrian earthquake relief, and then also to the Bangladesh and the Pakistani flood victims as well.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I can't even imagine how devastating that must have been. And also, to make it out alive, but see how many people didn't. And also to see firsthand what kind of needs are had during a humanitarian crisis. And I think, the fact that that informs your work every day is so impactful. And I'm really excited for the work that Fury's doing to be able to provide that relief because I mean, you're right. It is one less thing to worry about, and it is such a huge worry for menstruators, and can add so much uncertainty to already devastating times. And then you mentioned flooding, and I think that also intertwines with the rising impact of climate change and how that's driving a lot of migration and even more uncertainty and instability in communities that are impacted by climate change effects. And that also intertwines very much with sustainability. And I know that that's another one of Theory's main focuses because um, the truth is, so many period products are the opposite of sustainable, and they actually use really harmful ingredients, not just for the environment, but also for people's health. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on how we can make period products more sustainable and um, how that looks like for Theory and for your work.
So the good news is that there's a lot of small women-owned businesses that are trying to tackle this problem. And so what we do at Fury is we've essentially curated over 50 different types of period products that are healthier, more sustainable. So better for your body, better for the environment. And they're mostly small women-owned companies, but the pads that we use are either biodegradable or 100% organic cotton. And what I mean by that is an average period pad that isn't biodegradable will be on the planet for 500 to 800 years. So one period pad will be on the planet for
Wow.
500 to 800 years. The pads that we use that are biodegradable or 100% organic cotton will be on the planet for less than 1 year. Less than 1 year. And so what I'm really excited about is I'm seeing a lot of innovation happening globally to just tackle this problem. This industry, this period pad, tampons, panty liners, it's an industry that hasn't been innovative for decades, but that's changing right now. So we see period underwear, and while that is still has its own issues, I do think you will see the period underwear that we use is a vendor that has said that there's no toxins in it, and that it's safe for menstruators to use. And we see period menstrual cups. So menstrual cups will be, you could use them for up to 10 years. 10 years, one menstrual cup for 10 years. And so we see this new innovation happening in Africa. Actually, there's a vendor that I'm hoping we'll be able to launch with them soon. Is they have taken banana fibers and turned them into period pads. And so this is going to change.
Amazing.
But we also need the investment community, the venture capitalist community, to invest in these small businesses to help them succeed. And a lot of them, 99% of the vendors we use are women-owned companies.
That's incredible. And also the just the innovation that's happening is very exciting. And I think that is really being led by and for women, which is fantastic. I mean, I also saw the other day that the first study that really tested period products to see, their absorbency using actual blood and not just water came out like a couple of weeks ago. Um, and it's just, I was so shocked to hear that the first scientific study that was really looking at period product absorbency with, what they actually are supposed to absorb only came out a couple of weeks ago due to the efforts of women scientists. It's
and
just astounding to me, but also so important.
And this is why we need more women in STEM, because we
Right.
care about this. We use these products, right? And so I'm really excited. And I'm hoping that your generation will come up with better ways, better products to actually solve and tackle period poverty. I don't think the product exists right now. And I say this to everybody because I want somebody to invent it, is pads are great, but it's literally putting a band-aid on the problem. Tampons, only 7% of the world uses tampons. Tampons culturally have a lot of stigma. And so that the majority of the world uses pads who have access to period products. And so we do see menstrual cups growing. It's 38%, but it's of the worldwide population, but it's mostly in like Europe and the United States. And so I'm hoping that somebody will invent a product that should actually eliminate period poverty, that is a product that doesn't have to be inserted, doesn't need water, but could be reusable. So I'm putting it out there to the world for somebody to invent. And I'm happy to use it at Fihri.
That's so true. And I think just speaking with you has helped me see how many different not just issues intersect with period poverty and menstrual equity, but also different fields. So, I mean, for just Girl Up members and young people watching, whether your aspirations lie in STEM or policy or humanitarian work or even investment, entrepreneurship, that all really is intertwined with period poverty and access. And I think approaching this topic from as many different angles as possible is what's really needed for solutions. So it's just exciting to hear about your work and your perspectives. Um, and you mentioned period stigma a bit earlier, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on that. How do you, with Fihri, work to tackle uh, stigma around menstruation, and how do you see it impacting your work?
That's a great question. So I will say that I am somebody who loves to travel, and I will go anywhere in the world, and I've had friends from all over the world. And so this past March, we hosted for the UN Commission on the Status of Women, we hosted a panel from speakers from all over the world talking about period poverty and stigma. And I've never had an issue that was so global, that was the same in any country that you go to, which is unheard of. Like when you talk about education system, or you talk about like just cultural, there's a lot of cultural changes in the world, but when you talk about period stigma, it's pretty similar everywhere you go, which was very kind of eye-opening for me. And so talking about periods is one issue in schools. I mean, so I'll give you an example. This summer, one of the things we want to do is we had myself, but also Fihri team members and friends travel in different places in the world and leave our Fihri period kits just in random places. And we would actually start talking to people about periods and forget trying to talk to men about periods in other cultures. It just was like, no, they don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to touch it. And that's one of the problems in these disaster relief areas, is like it's men who are in charge of the, the kind of the setting up and shelter relief and so forth. And if they don't want to talk about periods, how are we going to get period products to the women? And so we need to talk about it in schools. We need girls to be educated. We need boys to be educated. We need our administrators to give access to period products to schools, to the students, so they could have access to going to school. But this is a topic that we really need to get more comfortable talking about. And if periods weren't invented, we wouldn't have you wouldn't be on the planet if there weren't periods. And so it's an issue that we really need to talk about. It's an issue that we really need boys to understand about. So I hope we could continue having these conversations with people in different industries, whether it's school administrators, whether it's with policymakers, whether it's with educators, just businesses, anybody. And I just want everybody to know I happily talk about periods when I talk to investors. When I do pitch competitions, I'm always talking about periods to men. Very comfortable at it.
That's amazing. And I think, um, yeah, I was at the Girl Up Leadership Summit earlier this year, and I absolutely loved meeting so many people from around the world and across the United States and conversation about menstrual equity. And there were several Girl Up leaders who brought up how hard it is to talk about it within their own schools because of a lot of stigma, but also even rules by different administrations that prevent people from talking about it in school activities. And Florida has the "Don't Say Period" law that bans instructions on periods before sixth grade. So a lot of young women were really bringing up the fact that they want to talk about it, but they just feel like they can't, or it's really hard to start that conversation, or they're in environments that kind of actively prevent it. So I was wondering if you have any advice for those people who do want to speak out but feel constrained.
I mean, we have the right to know about our own bodies, right? So we have a right to be educated. And so I would approach it with an administrator on a one-on-one informal conversation. Like, look, this issue is really important to me. I really would like 15 minutes of your time. When you ask people for 15 minutes, usually they say yes. And so just have a conversation about why this issue is so important to you and why this will benefit the school, how this will benefit education. Finding an ally that's an adult in your school is really, really important. And I hope you could at least find one person at your school to just have this conversation. I will say, school nurses, the conversation I've had with school nurses have been very positive and receptive, but this is in Massachusetts. So I'm not sure what it's like in other states, and I'd love to hear from people about how it is. But also, don't do things alone. I think, especially if you're part of a Girl Up Club, come together and ask for a meeting with your administrator, your nurse, or whoever is in charge, your school committee members. Have these conversations. Ask for a 15-minute meeting together.
Thank you so much for your advice on that. I think it's going to be really, really valued by so many young people because I think starting those conversations can be really tricky, but it is just the catalyst for so much change. And yeah, there are so many barriers even when it comes to that. So
And I
yeah.
will say, people are often uh, afraid to talk to policymakers. Let me be very clear: policymakers work for you. They need you. They need your vote. So, especially if you're over 18 years old, they work for you. If you're under 18 years old, they're going to be working for you soon. And so, asking for a meeting should not be difficult. And if they're busy for whatever reason, meeting with their staff sometimes is actually better, because they're the ones that will put in a good word, or just might be able to make change happen more quickly. And so the best way to make change is to just not be afraid, take that leap of faith, and just ask for a meeting. Just show up and get the conversation started.
Thank you so much. That's so important. And also, um, just in general, I think speaking up can be really, really challenging. But I think, as you mentioned, doing so, with your girl up community and with someone else and really just finding that strength together, I think has helped me so much when it comes to advocacy. And also just knowing that, yes, the person that you're calling, when you phone your legislator, will be probably an intern just a couple years older than you, who's probably equally scared to talk to you, but will really appreciate a caller who's like a young person who cares about just community issues. And yeah, I think just hearing from people who have engaged in legislative advocacy can also help dismantle the idea that it's somehow incredibly challenging, because I think there are like ways to enter that space and make a lot of impact. And I know you've been involved in legislative advocacy as well in Massachusetts. Could you talk a bit more about some of the work you've been doing in that sphere?
So, when I was a commissioner for the Midwest Commission on the Status of Women, our role was to advocate for legislation related to women and girls. And so we have been, and I know it still hasn't passed, but there's a bill called the IM bill, which would mandate free menstrual products in schools, prisons, and women's shelters. It still has not passed. In Massachusetts, it takes on average over 7 years for a piece of legislation to pass, which is really like sad. So that's why advocacy work is really, really important. And every year there's an annual Women's Advocacy Day at the State House in Massachusetts. And I think this happens in other states as well. So you should see when there is one at your state capital. And if there isn't, start one. But child marriage was a huge issue in Massachusetts. It was legal. We have what other bills? I'm trying to remember now. Sex education is not mandated in Massachusetts. And so there's a piece of legislation for that. Um, there's over 2,000 pieces of legislation that gets filed, thousands of bills that get filed in each legislative session. And so it's really important, if an issue is really near and dear to your heart, for you to collectively come together and advocate for that. The more noise you make, the more they pay attention. It really does work, whether it's emails, texts. A lot of legislators, not a lot, some of them have like meet and greets, like coffee hour, office hours, and so forth. Go to those. Ask for their cell number. A lot of them will actually give it to you, so you can text them regularly about a piece of bill, a piece of legislation.
I love that advice, and that's definitely so important and so encouraging to hear about, the different the different methods there are to take action in this sphere, but also, yeah, legislation takes a really long time to pass, and I think that just shows the need to sustain that effort. And it can be very exhausting, but just continuing year after year is so important. And just seeing, the progress that's being made from year to year is also very encouraging. Um, and I think with that in mind, you've been in the space for a few years now, and what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned along the way, or things that you'd like to reflect on, having experienced entrepreneurship and advocacy and so many other avenues of action?
The piece of advice the one thing that I've learned is being very comfortable wearing multiple different hats. I think society tells women and girls, oh, you have to be this or that. And it's like, no, I could be a lot of these different things. And it's okay for your journey to pivot. Pivoting can be fun, it can be scary, but it's okay. Sometimes life doesn't work out the way that you plan. Sometimes the biggest blessing is doors closing because it leads you to much bigger and better opportunities. And so I'm so glad I didn't win my election now, because I wouldn't have launched Fihri. And I love what I do. I love, love, love every single day that I get to work with amazing high school students, college students, to host period paloozas, these period kit making events. I love the beginning of the month because that's when we ship off a whole bunch of period products for our student sponsorship program. So individuals could sponsor a student in need, and we send them monthly sustainable period products. And I'm really, really honored to be able to have this disaster relief program where we're going to be able to help women and girls in different areas of the world. Um, uh, so, um, it's okay for things not to work out sometimes. It's sometimes ends up being better. You just need to be a little patient and it's okay to say, hey, I need help, or hey, can you introduce me to somebody? I hope everybody in the Girl Up community is on LinkedIn, because that's really important. Networking is really important. And if I could help anyone, introduce anybody to anyone in my network, I'm happy to do so. Just message me on LinkedIn.
That is really such valuable advice. And it also brings me to something I'm hoping to talk a bit more about, which is your period paloozas. I think they're such an amazing way to take action. And also, you can engage in them as a Girl Up leader with your Girl Up club, regardless of where in the United States or even abroad you are. So, I'd love to hear more about that, also with the lens of how can Girl Up members and clubs engage with them.
So our period paloozas are these super fun team bonding experiences. So groups, Girl Up Club members could fundraise directly on our website. And for every $10 you raise, the day of the period kit making event, we provide you with a reusable pouch and sustainable pads, tampons, or panty liners. You could choose just pads and panty liners if you want, or all three, however you like. Um, and then you write inspirational quotes on the period kits and you stuff them, and then we donate it to a school, a nonprofit, a shelter, a food pantry, or again to earthquake victims. We donate it to libraries. You get to select where it goes to, and I'm really excited that we have two Girl Up clubs. We're going to be working with some Girl Up clubs all over the world in the coming fall. I'm not going to give the details, but you'll be able to see that on our social media. But I'm really, really excited. We have some really great period paloozas coming up.
That's amazing. And so exciting that you're working with Girl Up clubs from around the world. Um, I think the Period Palooza model is very exciting because it lets you really do a hands-on kind of period product packing event that can really bring your community together, but also, being able to select where exactly you want the period products to go and have so many community partners. It's a really exciting opportunity, and I think also just knowing that the products are sustainable as well means a lot as well. I think oh yeah, go ahead.
I just want to give a shout out to the Algonquin Girl Up Club at the bottom. We host
Yes.
a period palooza with them and the Northborough Junior Women's Club and Community Acts. And we put together over 300 period kits and donated to the library, the food pantry, and the schools in the Northborough, Southborough area. So I want to give a shout out to the Algonquin Girl Up Club members.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. And yeah, also packing the product, in a way that keeps in mind how many products you need for a whole month is just something that I think is really thoughtful and important. And yeah, like I see oftentimes, in my school, the kinds of products that are freely available to us, there aren't very many, and they don't really take into account people's needs and the kinds of products that people would like to be using. And, it means a lot, I think, to have access to the kinds of products that feel safe and feel comfortable and are as many as you need for a month, for
What we
sure.
try to do at the period paloozas is put a variety of different pads and tampons and panty liners because choice really matters. And what works best for my body might be different than your body. And so this really is not only giving them access for the month, but also giving them access to try different products to see what works best for them. There's different types of tampons. There's ones with applicators, no applicators, plant-based applicators, cardboard applicators. And so we try to put a mix in the period kits along with, again, biodegradable pads or 100% organic cotton pads. I really believe in choice for women in their bodies, and having access to the right period product will help you be successful, because you aren't worrying about, oh, am I leaking? Oh, this doesn't feel good. Oh, this, I want you to focus in class. I want you to be successful in school. And so the last thing on your mind should be if your period product is working or not working, and making sure that it's not itchy and irritating your body. So that's what these kits also do, is provide a menstruator with a month's worth of supply, but also introducing them to new products that might be better for their bodies.
Absolutely. I love that. And one of my favorite things at Fihri's in-person location is this catalog where you can actually look at the products and feel them and see, how do they actually look outside of their packaging? Does this look like something I'd be comfortable using? I had never seen anything like that before going to Fihri, and made me realize, it can be daunting to be um, in an aisle in a pharmacy and see so many products and so ambiguously packaged and not really know what fits well or feels right. And also, period products are so incredibly expensive, and that's another huge issue. So I think I really like and value the work to destigmatize, but also to just make knowledge about products more accessible, because there is no one size fits all product. There's the choice is really important. And I think as we wrap up, there's one final question that I'm hoping to ask you. For other girl up leaders or just young people watching who want to make a difference for menstrual equity, but aren't quite sure where to start, or maybe they have a club who's interested and they'd like to be able to lead something on a larger scale. Um, what are some good ways to get educated about sexual and reproductive health and rights and justice? What are some ways to get involved? And what are some next steps that you would suggest for them to take to counteract period poverty in their communities?
Again, I would just say pick a topic that's important to you, find a group of people who care about that. And with the Girl Up community, you already have that. So that's the easiest. That part's easy. But then ask for meetings, ask for I mean, you literally have everything at your fingertips if you have a cell phone. I mean, that's what I love about your generation, is you have access to instant information. So educate yourself about topics that you care about, and then go and text your legislators, text your school administrators, email them, call them. You'd be amazed at how actually surprised they would be to get a phone call, because that doesn't happen anymore. So don't be afraid. It's okay if your voice is shaking. It's okay if your hand is shaking, but you're not doing this just for yourself. When you advocate, you are doing it for the collective community, for the women and girls who aren't present in that room. And so we need your voice. We need your strength. We need you. The world needs you. And so when you walk into a room and you ask for something, or when you walk into a meeting and you're asking your administrator, or your policymaker for something, just know that you have the entire Girl Up community and the Fihri community supporting you. You are not alone in this fight. And so please keep that in mind, and always, always, always remember that the world is so lucky to have you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, and I think is going to be very inspiring for everyone who's listening, as it has been for me. And I've really valued our conversation. I think we've covered so many important intersecting topics. Um, it's been really empowering to hear about the opportunities you've been creating to take action for menstrual equity, and the ways that your journey has taken you through so many different aspects of advocacy. And also just seeing how so many issues are interconnecting when it comes to period poverty in and of itself, which means that there are so many spaces in this movement for young people to get involved. And I think that's so important. It's definitely, you know, counteracting period stigma is very challenging, and starting these conversations can be challenging, but I think it's also a space where, as you said, our voices are so needed. So um, it's exciting to see the waves of change that are being made already, and the way that we can fit into this movement and together continue to take action. So thank you so much, Ceylan. It's been really wonderful speaking with you and hearing about your journey, and I've really loved our conversation.
Thank you so much, Ilinca, and the Girl Up community for having me. This has been such an honor.
Thank you.